Thank you. Um, Thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Mountain Oyster Club. Thank you, Alicia and Hugh, and anybody else who helped me put this stuff together. And thank you to all of you for your love for Western art and your love for art in general, I guess. It's becoming a less and less common thing. An appreciation for art. So let's see, where do we begin? So this is my growing family who has, my wife is here, and Maverick was just born, I don't know, 10 weeks ago or something. 6 weeks. 6 weeks. It feels like 10 weeks. No, he's actually a very good baby. He's been sleeping a lot, but and then my first son is Oliver there. So you can imagine, without my wife, I wouldn't be able to sort of paint as long as I have to in the days to produce the work that I do. So this was my life just right before COVID hit. I was a very avid triathlete. This is how I met my wife. This is, by the way, this is my attempt of making it is a story sort of worth telling, I guess. Anybody that winds up making a living painting is probably a relatively interesting story. But I'm here to try to kind of elongate it because when they asked me to do this, I was like, well, I don't know if I have so much to talk about, but this is my best go at it, and I appreciate you guys for staying awake. But anyway, this is what my life was right before COVID happened. I was a very avid triathlete. I did it full time, and so did my wife. That's how we met. And actually, when COVID happened, I was right in the process. If the lockdowns happened maybe a couple weeks later, I would have been in real trouble. I was very, very close to pulling the trigger on a training facility where I would train athletes because I have a master's in exercise physiology. And so I was into sport performance, and I was going to transition out of being an athlete into training athletes. So a very, very different life. But when COVID happened, it sort of gave me the space to learn to paint, which I always wanted to learn how to paint. When I was a kid, I had an aptitude for drawing, of course, as most artists can probably testify to. But growing up in San Diego, we had there's no art scene. We didn't know any artists. In those days, there wasn't even really Google to do a quick search or something like that for an art school of any kind, and so I never pursued it really. But throughout my adolescence and even at early adulthood, I wanted to learn how to paint. But it feels impossible at first, and it never sort of stuck. And so I got into other things. I was a finance undergrad, and then I went to I did that for some years, and then I got my master's in exercise physiology. And it was because of COVID that it gave me the space to learn how to paint, and pretty quickly thereafter we moved to this is some early work. This was during COVID. This work happened. Still not committing, just using graphite and a little bit of watercolor there. But I was able to already make the thing look like the thing, right? So I was able to I was able to just see something and copy it, right? So I didn't know what I was doing, but when COVID happened, I started doing it almost full time because I was already done with triathlon. 2019 was meant to be my last year anyway, so it was very like fortuitous in that way. And then so this would be in like 2020 when this work would have been done. I tried to get some drawings from like my childhood, but it was proving to be too difficult. It is out there. I was very into like comic books and stuff. If I would have committed as a young person, I probably would have went into illustration or animation or something. That's probably would have, maybe game design or something, but I probably would have gotten into that. And so in 2020, we decided, okay, so I can kind of do this a little bit. Maybe I should just get proper training because as young as I look, I'm not quite as young as I look. I'm 40 now, and so, well, I mean, but people think I'm like in my 20s. So I'm just trying to sort of set a timeline here. But 40 is old enough to where, if you're going to pick something new up, you better, don't fluff around and, try to mix some paints around and see if you can get there with trial and error. So, and it's always sort of been my temperament to just, seek out the best teachers and learn from the best in whatever you do. I've never sort of really been like a do-it-yourself, self-taught type of person. I've always been like, okay, I want to, whatever I want to learn from the best. And so I seek out the best. And so one of the better ateliers that was available to us with the country basically being shut down was the Academy of Realist Art in Boston. And these are charcoal drawings. This is kind of how we learn how to draw. It's the French Atelier academic method, and you're supposed to start with a year of just drawing, just graphite, and you graduate into charcoal drawing. And I went through that program, I think, in 10 weeks. So this was before my kids, and so I was there full time. And I was going through the program very quick. That top right one is the last cast drawing or painting. You get into painting after you draw cast. So these were, the one on the left is the final cast drawing. Oh, no, I'm sorry, the one on the right. That's charcoal and white chalk. And then you get into cast painting. So this is the atelier method, and this is the classic oil painting method, the indirect oil painting method that I learned from great teachers out there in Boston. And after the cast painting, you get into still life painting, and these were some of my still life paintings. And that's a master copy of Bouguereau in the middle. So the first project in still life painting is a white shiny object and red fabric, because they both teach you very difficult things with oil painting. The white shiny object is very difficult to paint because the specular highlight is the brightest color on your palette, and then everything else has to be darker than that. So it teaches you value control, that's a lot of what they've been teaching up until this point. But anyway, the one on the left is called the tenebrism, which is like emerging from darkness. I don't know if I have them all here. Yeah, I do. So the upper right one is the perishable, and then the bottom right one was my final project. Basically, you just pick, and those are all objects from my childhood. So it's from there that we moved to Colorado, and I was basically into my career as an oil painter. And it's very daunting at first. It's like, wow, what do I paint? Now I know how to paint, but the atelier, there's sort of a gap in the program where it's like they give you these skills, but then they don't teach you how to apply the skills, right? So the whole putting together references, figuring out what you want to paint, the developing a painting, that whole spectrum of the process is neglected in the academy. So when I got out of there, I was very much just in that process, trying to figure out what I want to paint, and that's a daunting sort of process where you're a young artist and you want to start making paintings that you have been admiring, but one of the problems that we discover is that references are very difficult to put together, and then being influenced as a young artist is an issue too. So early on, I was very influenced by the contemporary painters that I was looking at, because when I got into oil painting, it was very much through social media. I didn't get into it at like previous generations probably did, going to museums and looking at magazines and such. So for me, it was very much contemporary painters, and I was very influenced by them, and it was difficult to take the things that you like and you admire and sort of apply it and make it your own. And it's living in the Southwest and looking at a lot of the paintings that I admired, and the other sort of inspiring influences that are around me, with movies and the landscapes and whatnot that got me into the Southwest. And it's these sort of subject matters and these landscapes that I feel are sort of the most American, and I think that's probably why they've made them they sort of kind of got their hooks in me, and I don't know, I just love the Southwest. I love the grit and the nostalgia and everything that goes into it. So when I was done with the atelier, I basically landed in the Southwest, and I've been painting the Southwest ever since then. And these are some of the paintings that were sort of earlier on. These were, so to kind of put you in perspective where the timeline is, this is really only my second year selling art full time. When we got done with the atelier, I was painting full time, just generating paintings. I paint quite quick, and so my basement got filled with paintings. And I was like, I still didn't know, there still was not sort of a like a through line with the paintings. I was still just kind of exploring a lot, but I was generating a lot of paintings. And so I forget when that was, late 2023 or something like that, where we had the idea to do one of those tent shows, the white tent shows, the street festival things. And I bought a little tent, and I went down to one in Steamboat, and I filled the walls with a bunch of paintings, just trying to sort of offload the work that had been accumulating in my basement. And that went quite well, and so I did that. I did a few of those, and I was like, wow, this is it. People are actually interested in living with these paintings full time. And I mean, to this day, I'm so grateful to anybody that loves art enough, loves beauty enough to spend their stored energy, that's what money is, in this type of thing. There's so many ways that you can spend money, and especially when it comes to luxury goods that are not going to surround yourself in beauty the way that art does. And so I'm so grateful to it. It blows my mind every time that people still have that sort of priority, and I love it. So thank you all for that. I mean, and anybody that's ever bought an art, it's really, I think it's really an awesome thing. That I think it's yeah. So this is still me working through this Southwest genre. This was a painting from earlier this year. This is a painting very early on out of the atelier, very, very influenced by Jeremy Lipking. The guys that I looked at getting into painting, I still remember to this day where I was when I first saw a Jeremy Lipking painting. You know, those guys are the ones that got me into oil painting. I was like, wow, this is really possible to do. So when I got out of the atelier, I won't deny it. Those guys were the ones that influenced me greatly. And this is, you can kind of see me working through that influence and then trying to make it my own. I love the theatrical sort of cinematic compositions. I don't know that Jeremy ever painted a beautiful girl aiming down. We don't know what here, but anyway, yeah, it's you can see me trying to work through this, the influence, and then trying to make it my own. So I put these references together all sorts of different ways. I don't have a set method quite yet. It's kind of narrowing down, but I try to take a lot of my own pictures, but I'll put these images together in all sorts of different ways. This was a painting from last year, if you guys remember. That was here. And this bronze is here today. This was my first attempt at a bronze I did last year. I've really admired some of the guys that are able to do lots of different mediums. John Coleman, who is very excellent draftsman and then sculptor, of course, and painter. And so this was the sculptures here. This was my first attempt at one, and I chose to sculpt a painting that was successful for me called "Come and Take It" that you saw previously. And I loved the process. It was very tedious for me. I actually spoke to John. John gave me a critique about it, and he told me he could do that sculpture in a couple hours. And if anybody's met him, he's a really cool sort of no-nonsense guy. But that sculpture took me I was working on it off and on for months, so. But I would like to do another one in the new year. This painting here is down the street at Settlers West. And this painting's here just here. So you can definitely see this was done earlier this year. You know, you can still see the influence that you know, when a reference comes together of sort of, you know, the old masters, which we looked at a lot at the Atelier. I just can't help myself but give it a shot, you know, see if I can reproduce the magic that those guys were able to.
Jonathan, do you work from imagination or from models or from photographs?
That stuff in the background, that's imagination. But no, it's mostly it's photographs. This was a model. Yeah. This one was basically all a model. The background happened sort of just accidentally. I was filling in the background and something kind of strange happened, and I let it sit there for a minute, and then I started to kind of like it, and so I accentuated what was happening. It's you know, when I first did it, I was like, this might be a direction I could go, kind of introducing something abstract in a very traditionally painted subject. But you know, again, the references aren't coming in a systematic way yet, and so I'm not. It's not happening sort of reliably consistent. But I do think in my paintings you can see the two influences of being classically trained, but yet a product of the contemporary times. I think the dramatic lighting is something that happened a lot at the Atelier because we worked. The best way to learn is through a single source lighting, so that you can at least eliminate some factors of what you might be seeing. If you're seeing something strange happening, well, it's one light source, so you know it's basically a natural occurrence, right? It's not another light source happening or bouncing off something or other. So the dramatic lighting is definitely something I probably picked up from the Atelier. But it's definitely still, it's also for sure, I think from cinema, and just that love of drama. This nocturne is here, right? That reference came together in a strange way. I was the lighting is kind of bizarre. It would be a very strange thing for the light to crack through in just that right moment when those riders are on that ridge, but it's kind of like a movie still, you know, where like in a movie it might happen for a fraction of a second, but you take it and kind of immortalize it. These guys too. I mean, you just see it's very, very cinematic. I just love the drama. But this would be an example of a reference that I put together from visiting Monument Valley, and then you know I don't have the riders to bring out there or whatnot, so I photographed them here in up in Scottsdale. But the references don't always happen like that, so it's that's a very sort of typical way that you might see references come together, but these days I'll use sort of any tool, like you know I subscribe to all sorts of horse magazines and Western magazines, and so I'll pull images from all sorts of places, and these days I am also using AI to fill in a subject that might need to be there, or you know turn the subject, you know, clockwise or whatnot, or these days the tools can do so many different things. I think it would be negligent to not explore them. That's kind of my philosophy. I know a lot of people are, they don't like it, and I get it, but it is something that I've been exploring. This painting is also at Settlers West. This was just a direct photograph. These recent paintings that I've been doing, anybody that looks at my Instagram can see this recent body of work of these animals in these settings that kind of are sort of ethereal, and I don't know. I'm still sort of in this process where I'm working through the subject that I might land on and become obsessed with, that you see some artists just paint over and over and over again. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but I'm still sort of working through that, and I like the wildlife paintings. I don't intend to really do portraits, but these wildlife paintings that have a sort of ethereal, symbolic sort of feeling to them, like you're like, what's going on here? It doesn't feel like something that would necessarily happen in nature. I've been having fun with that because it kind of gets the viewer, that with the title can get the viewer to think about something, like what was the painter, if nothing else, what was the painter trying to do here? What was the symbolism here? This is another one from that series where it's just sort of this dramatic lighting, and a bison probably typically wouldn't really make it down in that landscape, right? But you're still like, wow, it's like almost spiritual or something. I love painting rocks. It's like it's kind of abstract. There isn't one right answer, which is very freeing. So you can just kind of have a little bit of fun. They can be very frustrating at times, but it's also as long as you get the values and the color, temperature changing and whatnot correct, then it works. And so I've been having a lot of fun painting just rocks and water and stuff. But as you guys can see, I love painting figures too. So I don't know where I'm gonna land. I love painting. I love painting so many different things. This current body of work that's been happening with these animals is, I don't know. It could go on for 5 years, or it could end relatively soon. So we'll kind of see. I don't know. That one's at Settlers West as well. So yeah, cowboys and horses, such cool narrative tools, and I love sort of just the Americana. I mean, it's just the most American thing ever. I may have ridden a horse once or twice, but I don't. I would love to. I mean, I'm a poser basically, but I would love to own a horse. My wife knows I want to own a horse someday. I have a hat that says "cowboy without a horse," So I want to grow up to be like you guys. I want to be a horse guy. Me and my buddy going out on rides every morning. I'd love to. But until then, I'm grabbing reference photos from other people's horses and stuff. But yeah, for me, it's just. They're just such an American animal, such an American sort of narrative. yeah, the kind of stories that I love, you know. So there's me in my studio. So yeah, like I said, when they asked me to do this, I was like, wow, well, I hope I have enough interesting things to talk about. And so I figured out, you know, the story is pretty interesting, that I got into painting during COVID, and if it wasn't for COVID, I don't think it would have happened. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have happened. So it's amazing that, you know, that quick, something not even in your control necessarily. I mean, I put in a lot of hard work to learn to paint. You know, when before my sons were born, I was at the atelier, you know, 60, 70-hour week. So I was, you know, leaving there blurry-eyed. So I trained very hard at the atelier, and it paid off because it just kind of sped the process up. But it really is a quick thing that's happened. It's just, you know, just last year that I was introduced to this awesome venue, and I hope to be here, you know, for the rest of my career. This venue is so cool. I would love to have a place like this in Scottsdale. You know, it's such an old school, just kind of cool spot. I really like it. So, yeah. Anyway, I would, you know, any questions that you guys would have that could, sure. Oh, sure. Okay. So these paintings, this painting, a few people have seen. It was towards the end of. So I am participating in the show in Scottsdale called Celebration of Fine Art, and so I painted that when I was there. But these other paintings nobody's seen. This one here is still wet, actually. I just finished it this week. It's called Praying Traveler, I think. Because if you can't, you might not be able to tell, but he's kind of, his head is bowed, and he's in prayer. This one here is called Reverence. And this one on the end is kind of just a fun painting. It's of the show 1883. Do you guys know it? Yeah. So I did it very small, and it was very, people just loved it, and I loved that show. The narration was, they deserve a Pulitzer for that narration. It was unbelievable. I did change the background a little bit, but that's Elsa Dutton. But you know, you can see kind of a wide range of things here. But I do love a lot of color. I love dramatic lighting. I love, even though it's very very chromatic, I still love sort of natural. The natural things that happen in lighting. So you know, I don't do a lot of artificial light. So I love, I love natural light. But you can see it's kind of a variety of subjects.
Do you still ride a bike?
No, I don't ride a bike too much. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's dangerous for one. Even when I rode a lot, you know, when we were in full-time training, I would just the bike. I would probably 25 hours a week, and I hated fighting the cars. I hated, you know, the danger, the smog, and everything. So I would love to be able to, but it's just no, it's dangerous, and it's very time-consuming. You know, if I have an hour free, an hour on the bike is not as efficient.
Jonathan, the women in your art and your sculptures are very strong, defiant, self-confident women.
Yeah.
Do they take after anybody that you know, your mother, your sister, your spouse?
My wife, of course, my wife. Strongest woman I know.
Good answer.
Yeah. No, they for sure that, but no, I have been surrounded by strong women. but I think they make such great narrative elements. You know, they're just the strength, but the vulnerability. You know, a guy I've tried to paint guys, and you know, people don't like. I don't know. People don't feel sorry for guys. They don't feel. They can obviously make very strong paintings, but a woman is just, you know, it does a lot of the heavy lifting. Yes, some of them. Yeah, many of them. Yeah, when it's a person, and that's why painting the people is a bit more difficult, because you know you need to meet the models. Painters don't want to introduce you to their models. You know, they've spent a lot of time cultivating those relationships and stuff, and especially the very like authentic cowboys and stuff like that. You know, first of all, those guys, they're not super interested in having you tag along or whatnot. You know, and so it is one of the barriers of painting people. You know, especially multi-figure things. I have hopes to do some big multi-figure paintings. But it's a lot more work. It's a lot more work up front to get the references together. You know, a landscape painting, you go out and you can photograph 1,000 images. Now it's still time consuming because you have to kind of be out there and whatnot. But people takes a lot more planning.
Yes.
Jonathan, you said you started painting during the COVID. Did you paint before, or did this all just come in the last 5 years
Yeah.
of your life?
Yeah, literally did not touch oil paints until like midway through 2020.
There's so many people, their life.
Yeah.
But how did you, just all of a sudden you didn't pick up a paintbrush before or anything?
Yeah, I tried a couple times. Yeah, I did try a couple of times, and with zero guidance, oil painting is. I mean, it feels impossible. I did go a couple of times to the art store and buy a set of paints and be like, okay, I'm gonna learn, and
It's amazing what you've done with your life. You're here now, you know, presenting this, and you're in other music or art galleries.
Thank you. Yeah.
As you are in 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so one thing I can say about that's quite interesting, because I have talked to a couple other painters that this has happened to. They've gotten into it later in life. John Coleman's one of them. I think John Coleman was even later. I think he was like mid to late 40s when he started. So, and he's one of the most successful painters, certainly in the Southwest, you know, but one of the most successful painters in the world. And he says the same thing. And I think what happens is, so you have this aptitude when you're a kid. You know, it's innate. And then even if you don't cultivate it throughout the years, you're kind of downloading things that you don't realize you're downloading. You know, you're downloading sensibilities. You're downloading even your eye. You know, there's things that are happening that we don't know exactly what's happening, because people that get into it later in life, or they take many years off. Coleman took many years off. He wasn't a complete novice when he got into it in his mid to late 40s. You have made progress, this strange progress, like your brain was working on things in some sort of way, even though you weren't actually touching the paint. So I do think getting into it in my mid-30s was not the same. Year one was not the same as if I would have started painting in, 17 in year one then. So there's definitely a difference that happens. Something, something strange happens. Or in the years you're looking at the world and something's happening, and then when you get into it, it happens quicker. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. I don't know.
So, I hope this isn't too personal, but
No.
did either of your parents have like an artistic bent?
No, I have one aunt that kind of paints like Bob Rossi kind of things. but like very Bob Ross. I think she actually follows the videos. But other than that, no. And I actually have a theory about that too. You know, I think it probably is in there somewhere in previous generations. And, you know, this is a very risky and lucky thing, you know, to be able to do. And so, and if you're, you know, working the coal mines or whatever previous generations were doing, this, you know, you may be been the best draftsman ever, but you're in the coal mines, you know, you're not, it doesn't matter. So I do think, I guarantee I have some distant grandparent or uncle or something that was probably some master and never knew it.
So when you find your inspiration for your next picture, like the ones we're looking at up here, like 1883, how long did it take, A, how long did it take to do that project? B, are you working on more than one at a time and you kind of move from one to the other? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I do have several going. That has changed a little bit. I do tend to sort of just get one kind of done now. Especially at a certain size, you can work different sides of the painting, and the other side is drying. And also in Scottsdale, everything dries so fast. There's no issue juggling that. But the time it takes depends. It can depend quite a bit. There are paintings that I've had to get done very fast, and if I can be in the studio double time, you know, and get them done in a few days. You know, maybe a painting like this, in maybe a few days if I have to do it. But at my leisure, you know, a painting like this probably takes a couple weeks at my leisure. Yeah.
Jonathan, one of the things that I've always been interested in, especially in the old masters, is their use of shadows and their incorporation of shadows, like especially Rembrandt. When you think of him as the great artist of the shadow. And I was watching the way you use shadows in your paintings, and then I saw that painting of the kiss underneath, where the shadow is practically the painting. Do you want to say a word about how you use shadows?
Yeah. In fact, we can go back to that painting if you. I don't know if the colors kind of show up good enough, Hugh. Yeah, people do mention that a lot. I do think that I'm pretty sure that that's my training. They have like kind of an axiom in the Atelier.
There it is.
Yeah. That is, I forget how it goes, but it's basically like go darker, because you know, our material can only go so dark. It can't go as dark as our eyes can see, and it can't go as light as our eyes can see, not even close. And apparently our eyes can only pick up like 0.2% of the wavelengths anyway. So, you know, the medium is extremely limited in the grand scheme of things. And so in the Atelier, they trained us to sort of exaggerate the light effect by, you know, if you want that the specular highlight on the orange to really glow, then everything else has to be very dark. And there's a lot of tricks to that, but the way that you make it dark too, people try to go for the dark too quick, but if you build the dark up, it will have sort of this luminosity, even the dark part. And so I think it's my training that, because people have mentioned that before with the shadows. And I think it's my training that they taught me to, for one, look at nuances in everything while squinting. So there's kind of a paradox in a lot of different things in painting. One of the tricks is to eliminate information by squinting, but then another you know tool that you have to cultivate is looking longer than people are willing to look to glean what's happening, really. And that some of these still lifes, we'd sit there for, that bottom right one probably took me 300 hours. I was, I was with that painting for a long, long time. In the atelier, we spend a long time with paintings. We do, entire semesters on a single drawing, so, just, like work, keep pushing it, pushing it, pushing it, pushing it, pushing it before, long after someone thinks it's done, you're still, it's like, I'm not even halfway done, right? So, I think that's what it is. I think it's the training that's.
Do we have time for one more question? Anyone? Yes, in the back.
Thanks, Sean. You spoke a lot to like cinema and your paintings as an inspiration. Is there any continuity between models or these characters that you build between paintings, or they're all singular aspects?
It's a little bit singular right now, and that is one thing that I'm working on. So it's a good question, because that continuity is something that I'm still looking for. I was touching on it a little bit on all the different subjects that I like to paint. And one of the ways to get to continuity is by limiting the subjects, but I don't know if I'm just scatterbrained naturally, or if this is like kind of just the process, and eventually the muse, there will be some sort of coherent, consistent muse that happens, or something, So yeah, to answer your question, there isn't enough continuity. That is one of the something that I'm still looking for.
All right, please join me in giving a warning.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Jonathan, I feel like we're so lucky to have you on the front end of your art career, and that we can watch you grow
Yes.
and be part of us. So
Well, thank you so much for being part of it.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here and for sharing your story. Jonathan wasn't sure he'd had enough of a story to share,
Yeah.
but you do, and it was wonderful.